Pariyatti Audiobooks presents Chapter 11, The Path of Power, from Journey of Insight Meditation by Lerner, as read by Jonathan Nelson.
Chapter 11, The Path of Power. The light of God, Ishvara, the Lord, divine luminescence, seen with the mind's eye only through a mind that can see. I stared with eyelids drawn immobile at an empty black background. The shimmering disk of cool brilliance was not an object, but an event which eyes cannot see. My attention stayed with the breath as it had for days, the tiny touch of my life against thin skin. The awareness on that single point was almost unbroken. That stillness of mind created the light that cannot be seen, only known, until I felt the light, breathed light as a tingly, glowing star. In the space that had no measurements between me and the light, the pull toward union grew. The light was a doorway in space to some other dimension, the gateway to God. Can I go to Him? Will He come to me? There can be no time. My being was at ease in the glowing proximity of its own light. The mind had come down to just that. Its beginningless formations, endless ruminations, vast wells of hatreds and desires had all been momentarily subdued, replaced by an empty beam that shone into the darkness of my mind, producing clear, white light. I was aware of it across a chasm of silent space, at the bottom of which lay my stilled mind, whose movement had been shackled by the continuous awareness of the breath moving in, moving out, moving in, moving out. When the mind is still, its nature is light. I perched warily on the edge of the chasm, conscious of the sleeping monster below, aware of the pull to the luminescence across the expanse of nothing. I had stepped out toward it before, seeking to become one with that light as it beckoned me, and the movement plunged me down into the awakened darkness of my mind, come quickly alive. Now I sat stock still. Nothing else could be done. To put attention on the light is to snuff it out, because it is not there. It is not available to any of the mind's senses or to thought. Only when thought and senses are absolutely stilled by the continuous awareness of that single point of breath is the light manifest. And as the light became clearer, sharper, and brighter, it beckoned across that chasm of space. My only lure was patience, calmly observing without reaction the shower of bright comets and flashing meteors across the dark sky of my mind, returning to my breath until the flashing of light coalesced into a single disk that pulsed with each breath. I felt anticipation rising and immediately let that feeling go. The need to let go of the rising thoughts was continuous as the intensity of the light grew and beckoned, "Come to me." I quickly let go of the thought, lest the mind monster at the bottom of the chasm take shape in that thought. The tempo quickened until my mind, as if buoyed upon a cresting wave, rode above the thoughts, straight ahead to dead silence. And the light was sharper, clearer, closer than I'd ever known it. I stood to balance on the wave, relaxed, sure that I was at my goal, when without warning the light flared into a brilliance that blinded me, threw me off balance, plunged me under into blackness. Falling, falling, all I heard were shrieks of laughter. Slowly, I stretched my legs out and got up. It was only mid-afternoon. A certain numbness pervaded my consciousness. It had been this way for nearly a week now. I noticed that I was standing immobile in the room, not yet back in my body. I opened the shutters on the windows. The brilliant heat of midday was already fading. I felt as though I was coming down off some powerful drug. A hallucinogen? No, it was all too real. How long? About a week since I returned to the monastery from my brief sojourn with Nyanaponika at Kandy. And since then, light years. My own pun amused me. Light. The prize of mystics through the ages, the illumination of God, but to these sober Buddhists, it is only nimitta, the sign of the mind's concentration. No God, no nothing, just the mind, and that is but a hollow process. From the beginning, I'd been taught that there is concentration and insight. The first is the tool, the other the way. Until recently, the sharpening of the tool, the repetitious observation of the breath, the development of the ability to hold the attention on one single point, had been gruesome work. Until, almost unexpectedly, I found my attention gently anchored to the passage of the breath, unperturbed by the events within and without it. Its expansions, contractions, ripples, or wheezes didn't alter the attention. Nor did the screams of birds or other forest sounds. I was amazed. As if a switch had been thrown, my consciousness leaped into a different mode, and the connection between my awareness and the event of my breath became so profound that all the other events of mind, its fears, desires, burbling disquiet, painful aches, and droopy torpor, simply vanished. In one instant. Not slowly, gradually rubbed out, but gone. I stretched my arms up over my head, pretending to act normally. I couldn't really remember that state of mind. The mind-cooling periods of stillness on the pillow were followed by hot explosions of irrational fear, loud thumps of leaves against the roof, and the dreadful marching of mice on the rafters. I was hacking my way through a jungle. The process had been simplified to stillness only, yet I was at every instant struggling with the desire of my being not to be still. I was more and more becoming a boulder in the stream, and as the water rushed by more ferociously in the narrowing path, beginningless, endless water of time and mind, I felt its force wearing at me. If I relented for a moment, I was swept along with it, plunged back into the torment of random thought and the hell of my unbridled mind. I couldn't tell whether the periods of stillness made the chaos more intense just by comparison, or whether my stilled, increasingly powerful mind states were diving deeper and deeper into chaos. I stood in the doorway of my hut, staring emptily ahead, considering, as much as my mind was capable of such thought process, where this was all taking me. I could feel that I was at a crossroads. In one direction was the uniquely Buddhist practice of insight, in which the mind observes whatever passes before it and lets go. It learns emptiness. It becomes empty. It holds to no state, no bliss, no high. It simply is. But the other path the Buddha knew well, too, the path of jhana. It is the traditional path to mystic states. To God, if you think He's there, or if, like the Buddha, you know that nothing is there, then still you recognize that states of mind exist, powerful trance states where the ordinary mind process is interrupted, replaced by experiences of bliss and supreme joy. Teachers in Burma had told me that these states of jhana, as they are called, are dangerous. They are the road to power, not wisdom. Through them, one develops supernormal powers, like reading minds, telekinesis, or being in two places at once, all very clearly outlined in the ancient manuals of Buddhist psychology. The powers didn't particularly attract me, and I'm not sure I believed in their availability. The states of mind, though, were clearly an attraction. It was, to me, power of a different sort. Not power to do anything, power to just be. I felt it in the enormous calm, and even in the trembling fears. I could negotiate the fears. I'd learned to relax when they seemed overwhelming, as they did right now as I stared blankly out my doorway, and to proceed again when they had passed. Intuitively now, I read the signals of my mind-body. A psychic overload warning flashed. Idling in a doorway was not enough. The pressure that the late hours on the pillow had built was threatening to explode. I had to open valves. I sat down in the chair at the table and slowly poured myself a cup of tea from the thermos and stirred in a few heaping teaspoonfuls of raw sugar. My notebook was my raft when the waters got too treacherous for swimming. I took it out, marked day 7 and the date at the top of a clean page, sipped some more of my beverage, and began writing. The gentle diversion of searching for words and the attention-consuming activity of actually moving the pen were ground wires in the storm. I described my dips and peaks of mind, smiling at them from a distance. The going was heavy, but I decided I was managing through it. As I dotted the end of the last sentence, an explosion of thunder punctuated it, and the roof rattled under an assault of rain. Standing at the open door, I saw large puddles all around the hut already, and long founts of water streaming from the corners of the roof. I suddenly remembered that this morning I had thought about paying a tea-time visit to Suno in his quarters, as he had invited me to. The thick curtain of rain now put an end to any such notion. It would have been nice to have taken a walk just now, to get out of the hut for a while, to speak some words. I'd heard no sound except my own voice for a week. I thought about saying something aloud, if only to myself. No, I shouldn't. I turned quickly back into the room. What to do? I had already written in my notebook and had my tea for the day. I approached the bed. It seemed out of the question to meditate more right now. My mind was accelerating. I walked to the desk, numbly opened the notebook, and stared at the last page of what I had just written. It seemed like a weak joke. Heavy going, but managing well. I grimaced. Only an hour ago. Writing is such a lie, perpetrating the illusion that the past can be retained. I dropped the book and thought the table would collapse under its weight. The room was assuming rude proportions. The acceleration continued. I made no effort to stop it. I was paralyzed, with no words of self-encouragement. I could whistle no happy tunes. I found myself sitting on the front step, a downpour just inches from my face, my mind rummaging through possibilities of escape from the state that could only be described as insanity, complete dissociation, images and thought at random. Then, like a boulder smashing against my head, there was the realization that in the next instant I could be stark raving mad. My only choice was to stumble up that raving hill through a forest of terrors to seek safety with a yellow-robed gang who didn't speak English anyway. I heard the soundless scream of chaos, then silence. I was aware of my breath. I felt its touching, and responding automatically, I got up and closed the doors and shutters. When I sat on the bed, I felt my eyes drop behind their own curtains. I was alone. Suddenly, the thoughts were whispers, and I was aware of mind light. Sharp, distinct, a tiny glowing disk. By keeping my attention firmly rooted to the breath, I could expand the light to a burning saucer, shrink it to a tiny pinpoint of brightness, and then blow it up to light the entire universe. Then slowly the light contracted and stabilized as a tiny sphere of perception. I watched in awe, and then unmistakably felt a beckoning, an actual pull toward the light, as if it were holding out a hand, bidding me to come. I didn't have to decide. I was sucked forward. I tumbled toward it, into it, through it, vitally aware all the while. Perceptions flowed through new channels, and my entire being welled up with joy. I'd been transported, rematerialized in a different universe. Time was glutted. Mind-body was soaked in bliss. Guided by that storm, I was soaring as if my body had been pumped full of joy by the bellows of bliss. It could go on forever. It could go on forever. This was the tacit understanding. I wasn't holding on to anything. I was there. I was in this other place. Perhaps I'd never return. Perhaps there was no way out. Thought faded. Experience overwhelmed it. An enormous joy, a consuming exuberance overtook me, took me away. Finally, I brought it to an end. Perhaps I was too dizzy to continue. My clock indicated that 2.5 hours had gone by. Slowly, I untangled my body, which had been returned to me. It was dark outside. I stood in the open doorway, waiting for the fact of time's passage to register properly, to mean something. I looked around the room. Its strangeness was unmistakable. Not like before. Before, when, I recall, I was insane. And what was I now? Thought had not yet returned to normal. I still felt that other realm where thought was rendered superfluous. What to do? There was not much to occupy the time in a hut like this. My hands lit the kerosene lamp and searched out the notebook. I began to write, but the words felt cumbersome, unwieldy. Sentences hung together like chicken wire. Why was I writing anyway? What made what had just happened so important that I was throwing out nets to capture it? Why couldn't I let go of it? In a fit of inspiration, I blew out the lamp and tiptoed back to bed, carefully smoothed out the cushions, and sat. Why write when I could be there? An hour went by, and I was still unable to disengage myself from the randomness of my mind, unable to fly. I probed and searched for the keyhole in the invisible door that opened onto the other dimension. I feigned stillness, but no one was fooled. Finally, I got up again, lit the lamp, and poured the last cup of tea from the still warm thermos. It was getting late in the evening, but I wasn't close to being sleepy. I found myself pacing the floor until I realized that I was hanging out, waiting for the next round. Time on my hands. Looking for something to do, like a junkie waiting for a connection. The dark hints of danger along this strange path of jhana that my teachers in Burma had given me suddenly were apparent. Not the powers that could be developed, they were leagues away. No, right here in the first plunge was the real danger. It felt good, and I wanted more. Screech! Chugga chugga, chugga chugga, chugga chugga. Jump of my mind, time in reverse. A first-class train compartment speeding toward Benares. Travis stretched out on the lower berth across from me. The remains of our sumptuous fruit and nut salad on the floor. Memories of Goenka and the Jain temple glowing like the setting sun behind us. Heading for a new day. This, my boy, is the good life. Cool evening breezes from wide open fields brush our faces comfortably. The talk turns to good old days. We are reminded of our trips and adventures, fine beaches, fine mornings with fine women in cafes after wine all night. Exotic tales of Sumatra and Malaysia, hotels we both knew. I'm ready, Travis smiled nostalgically. We can blow off the meditation course and be in Goa by late afternoon tomorrow. And then? I asked. We'd be bored by the weekend, he sighed. Travis swung his legs down to the floor. I think this meditation is a bit of a trap. How so? Well, why did you start it anyway? To get high, right? That's really it, isn't it? I mean, one day, after you'd been grubbing through your life for 20 years, someone gave you something to swallow, and it blew your brains out. Everything you used to worry about didn't matter at all, but 12 hours later, it was over. So that's when you set out for the beaches, right? And the moving and the traveling and never staying anywhere long enough to know last names. And that was really high, until the edge wore off, or the dope made you psychotic. And then, someone tells you about the ultimate high, the experience with no end, meditation. Just sit still and be quiet. I waited. And now? Travis shrugged. You know what's now. Are you high? Am I high? I'm right here, being equanimous, seeing all things the same so nothing can get us high. And we feel guilty if it does. It's all the same. Beaches and train stations. What's the difference? Only our minds make the difference. There's nothing to get excited about. I can't believe anymore in the things that used to get me high. And that's tough, because there's still part of me that wants that hit, that bliss, that flying over the rainbow rush. I don't want to know that what I'm flying on won't last, that it all fades, and I'll crash if I don't let go. But part of me does know it, so I have a hard time getting off the ground. But I keep trying. Half the truth is painful. The compartment was nearly dark. Travis's words had spiced the cool air with sadness. The hut was cool and dark. I stepped outside under a starful sky. It was calming, a step away from chaos, terror, and bliss. I felt I had learned something. I had a sense of where I was heading, and it was not in the right direction, not the path I had started out upon. With each step, I was getting farther and farther from insight. I had ceased witnessing the process and had become, once again, an eager participant, flying and crashing and suffering. I had given up understanding for enjoying, and enjoyment never lasts. This soaring flight of jhana had been a wonderful teacher. It had been much easier, by comparison, to develop equanimity toward pain and to understand its emptiness and its impermanence, because I wanted to work through pain, to go beyond it. Bliss is much harder to let go of, but in the holding on there is nothing but suffering. The holding is the pain. This moment, now, under a sky full of stars and a cool, tropical breeze with a forest breathing bedtime symphonies, this was it. Not memories of other mind states or yearning for their return. Buddha was right. God may make you happy, but even He can't end your suffering. Only knowing will.
Pariyatti, a nonprofit 501c3 organization, offers a wide variety of books, eBooks, videos, and audiobooks about the teachings of the Buddha, the Pāli language, and Vipassana meditation. Browse our complete catalog at www.pariyatti.org.